Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Mega Project. In this one, Hyperloop. I feel like in the last couple of episodes we've done, I don't know if they'll have actually gone out in this order, but we've done some older projects, so it's nice to be returning to something a bit more current, or really a bit more in the future, so let's just jump into it. The future is here. Well, nearly. Maybe. Imagine, if you will, a time when we don't travel by plane or slow, plodding trains. Instead, we board a small pod and travel through tubes to our desired destination. This may sound like pure science fiction to some, but the truth is, it's a lot closer than you would have ever imagined. That's kind of thing. Science fiction is just how we envision tomorrow. Chances are that someday it's going to arrive. The Hyperloop project is visionary both in terms of the proposed technology, but also how we're trying to achieve it. The plans for the open source project were free to all back in 2013 and has attracted teams from around the world, each working on roughly the same kind of design. Yeah, there's certainly a race to build the first, but it all began with great collaboration. If or when Hyperloop is officially opened, it may herald the kind of dramatic changes in travel not seen since the discovery of the wheel. Forget spending hours in airports and on planes. The Hyperloop, traveling at speeds of up to 760 miles per hour, that's 1,223 kilometers per hour, will be able to do it in a fraction of the time. And that is just the start of things. Some believe that this type of transportation may one day be even able to accommodate hypersonic travel over 3,000 miles per hour, or close to 5,000 kilometers per hour. Hyperloop is a surprisingly simple concept with a lot of challenges. A pod holding up to 28 passengers traveling through tubes using air pressure. These will be able to be modified to carry freight and possibly even other vehicles, and we're going to get into all of that nitty-gritty a little bit later on. But this is really a good starting point. If you think about science fiction films or TV, we often see people in the future traveling in small pods in tubes. These are essentially hyperloops. We've been thinking about this for a long time, and it seems that finally we're not actually that far away from it. So why do we need this? Well, there are numerous benefits in theory. There are also some drawbacks which we'll look at a little bit later. Time is a major factor in the 21st century. We live faster than we have ever lived before. Whether that's a good or bad thing, well, this isn't a channel about that. This is a channel about mega projects, so we'll just leave that aside. The speeds that the Hyperloop would travel would mean huge decreases in travel times compared to both trains and planes. In the UK, a trip between London and Manchester, which now takes over 2 hours, could be reduced to just 14 minutes. In the United States, a journey from Los Angeles to San Francisco could be completed in just 35 minutes. It would allow large numbers of people to move at speeds that had never been possible before. The original design had pods leaving every 30 seconds during peak times and every 2 minutes during quiet periods. We could live and work in different cities without the dread of commuting for hours. It could also help to alleviate housing problems, as we wouldn't have to all squash into the same cities in order to live. The second major benefit is the reduction in emissions. A study found that if every journey between 310 and 932 miles per hour that is now completed by a plane was done with Hyperloop, travel emissions would fall by a whopping 58%. The Hyperloop would run on solar energy, possibly from panels sitting above the tube, though it must be said that the feasibility of that thing has been questioned. Now, all of this sounds rather futuristic, but the seed of this idea, the real basis for it, actually stretches back over 2 centuries. It was in 1799 that George Medhurst, a British mechanical engineer and inventor, first proposed the idea of an atmospheric railway. This would push objects pneumatically through cast iron pipes using compressed air. Now, early versions of this design actually appeared in Britain and Ireland in the 19th century. If you compare this railway and the Hyperloop, it's easy to see absolutely no comparison, but the reality is the concepts are pretty similar. There were gradual improvements over the years, but basically there wasn't much wider enthusiasm and it was just never a commercial success. One example is still in operation today, and it's the air removal system located at the Porto Alegre airport in Brazil. While we certainly have succeeded with primitive forms of Hyperloop, the grand dream has always been something much bigger. In the 1970s, ideas began emanating out of the United States, partly as an act of prestige, because the Japanese Shinkansen, or bullet train, was making waves around the world, and the US wanted to compete. A pneumatic rail network connecting the large, heavily populated Northeast was discussed, with a total of 9 stations, with similar inner-city models for San Francisco and New York City. These ideas would have greatly reduced the impact on the environment, but were never expanded upon. However, it was another and far more ambitious project that really catches the eye. A tube was proposed running from New York to Los Angeles, buried below the Earth, moving at an astonishing 3,000 miles per hour or 4,800 kilometers per hour. This meant that the commute between the two cities could be done in less than an hour. It came with a painfully high cost estimate, though, of around $1 trillion, which scuppered any further development. But just imagine that this was something that could potentially really have been done. But of course, the idea was all theoretical and it never went anywhere. The astronomical costs of these projects has always been enough to put just about anyone off. If only we had a vastly wealthy, perhaps slightly crazy entrepreneur with billions of dollars to throw around. It's fair to say that Elon Musk has made a name for itself, whether it's electric cars, solar energy, space travel, being crazy on Twitter, or smoking weed on Joe Rogan. He has been at the forefront of his fields for several years now. In 2012, he introduced the world to an idea which came to be known as Hyperloop. He described it as a cross between a Concorde, a railgun, and an air hockey table. But this is where the project stands out from other eccentric billionaire projects. I mean, you can check out our video on the Hercules H4 if you're interested in another one of those. The Hyperloop has actually been made open source. This means that designs have been made available to all, with improvements and upgrades always being welcome. While designs are constantly evolving, the first design was known as the Hyperloop Alpha concept. This first design was for a tube to maintain a partial vacuum through which pods would travel while floating 0.5 to 1.3 centimeters above the tracks using air bearings, which create a thin film of pressurized gas, providing a small interface between two objects. This kind of pneumatic lifting device is similar to that on a hovercraft, or better yet, an air hockey table. So basically, it means that the pod is just ever so slightly levitating. These pods would travel through tubes made of steel and concrete, either above ground on pylons or below ground in tunnels. It would use the maglev system, a modern train system in operation around the world, but rarely used at high speeds. China and Japan do currently use high-speed models which can travel up to 375 miles per hour, 603 kilometers per hour. The magic comes from two sets of magnets. The first pushes the train up and off the tracks, while the other propels it forward. The pods would be controlled using linear induction motors laid throughout the tubes, which can accelerate or decelerate the pods. With almost no rolling resistance, these pods would be able to pretty much just glide through the tubes, and, well, doesn't it all sound so easy? The pods themselves would measure 2.23 meters, 7 foot 4 inches in diameter, with a projected top speed of 760 miles per hour or 1,220 kilometers per hour, which is what is needed to maintain aerodynamic efficiency. While sitting in one of these pods at speeds, you would experience about 0.5 Gs of inertial acceleration, which is only about 2 or 3 times that of a commercial aeroplane landing or taking off. And we say only here, but I mean, it is quite anxiety-inducing to be pushed back into that seat, and 2 to 3 times that sounds pretty intense. MIT built the world's first prototype system in 2016, and the following year it performed the world's first Hyperloop test run. But others were close behind. Part of the genius of the whole Hyperloop project has been a series of competitions to test various Hyperloop pod models, specifically for speed. I know that sounds a little primitive when it comes to technological advancements, but this friendly competition has pushed the project along at a real speed. More than 700 teams entered the Hyperloop pod competition sponsored by SpaceX, with a shortlist of 22 chosen to build prototypes. The Germans are doing very well with this. A team from the Technical University of Munich have triumphed in each of the past 4 years. The competition is based purely on speed, providing the pod also slows safely. Last year's top speed and the current world record was 288 miles per hour, 463 kilometers an hour. This is way below what designers are hoping for in the future, but with each year, there has been a steady increase. So as I said, the original Alpha design was released in 2013, but almost from day one, others from around the world have been adding or altering the design, usually after extensive modeling. We don't have time to go into every tiny improvement here, but these were two of the earliest and most important. In 2013, Ansys Corporation ran computational fluid dynamics simulations to ascertain the aerodynamics of the pod and the stress that it would be subjected to. While the results showed that the pod's design would need reshaping to avoid creating supersonic airflow, it was agreed that it was feasibly possible at the very least. Again, in 2013, a paper released by NASA OpenMDAO clarified the need for a larger diameter tube than had been originally planned and recommended a reduced cruise speed of closer to Mach 0.85, 650 miles per hour on safety grounds. They also recommended the removal of onboard heat exchangers. These were designed to reduce the temperature throughout the tubes, but the study found only a negligible reduction considering the extra weight. Its predicted temperatures would only reach 17 to 22 Celsius, 30 to 40 Fahrenheit above normal. Now this is the million-dollar question. All of the designs, competition, and general big talk doesn't mean anything until we see an actual Hyperloop in operation. So, where is it going to be? While California was assumed to be where the first Hyperloop would appear, that certainly isn't a given. Governments from around the world have sat up and they're taking note of what's being developed, and it now looks increasingly likely that the world's first Hyperloop will actually fall outside of California. Indeed, it'll fall outside of the United States. The Alpha design was based around the idea of a Los Angeles to San Francisco Hyperloop at an estimated cost of $6 billion for a passenger-only service and $7.5 billion for a slightly larger version capable of transporting vehicles. No work has been done on the project, and considering California is in the process of building its high-speed rail link between the two cities, it's not clear if this will still go ahead. Hyperloop Transportation Technologies, HTT, founded in 2013, was the world's first Hyperloop company. The company currently has 800 employees dotted around the world, some working full-time, but many chipping in on a part-time basis when they can, often working for stock options. HTT has announced 3 separate locations for early Hyperloop tube test tracks. The first was in California, somewhere between Los Angeles and San Francisco. The second, an experimental track that would link Abu Dhabi and Al Ain in the United Arab Emirates. While in 2017, a separate project was announced in India, but none of these have been built. In 2018, both China and Ukraine got in on the act, with further discussions taking place in Europe and the United States. Also in 2018, the company unveiled its prototype pods, measuring 32 meters, 105 feet in length and weighing 5 tons. It was also considerably larger than the initial Alpha plans, with enough room to accommodate up to 40 people. The outer skin is a material called vibranium, consisting of carbon fiber and embedded sensors. The company reported that it is 8 times stronger than steel. Hyperloop One, now Virgin Hyperloop One, has been another company that has played a key role in development, and many believe that the world's fully functioning Hyperloop will come from them. Their Hyperloop One had its first successful trials in 2016, in which they were able to accelerate a sledge from 0 to 110 miles per hour in just 1 second. In 2017, Hyperloop One performed the world's first full-scale Hyperloop test. This was the first time that all aspects of the Hyperloop concept were put into practice together, including vacuum, propulsion, levitation, sled, control systems, tube, and structures. Unsurprisingly, Virgin has been inundated with offers since then. In 2018, Richard Branson, the head of Virgin, announced a preliminary agreement to build the world's first Hyperloop between Mumbai and Pune in India, but there has also been discussion in Scandinavia, the UAE, Russia, and many more. So I know we haven't really answered the question of where it will first emerge, but perhaps that adds to the aura. Part of the exciting mystery is that we just don't know. We'll leave this section with a quick note from Shervin Peshawar, co-founder of Virgin Hyperloop One. Hyperloop will be operational somewhere in the world by 2020, so I guess the mystery goes on. As you can imagine, this project has faced its fair share of criticism. Some have fretted over the passenger experience on the Hyperloop, stating it would be too upsetting for those in the pods. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be pretty intense, but, the fact that I can get places super fast, that will ease the pain. However, the reality is that there are certainly going to be some dangers associated with traveling at speeds this fast. Also, cost has been a major hurdle. Rarely are governments or large organizations willing to put their faith in supremely expensive projects like this. To many, it still just feels like science fiction and just financially unfeasible. Yes, the cost of a working Hyperloop would run into the billions, but when you consider what we spend that much on these days, is it really that much? Opposition to the project often boils down to opposition to change. Our transportation systems work, so why bother changing them? Make no mistake, the Hyperloop will change everything and will have a knock-on effect for numerous industries who might not be willing to go quietly. Successful Hyperloops around a country like the United States would likely spell the ends of most, if not all, internal air travel and would severely alter every type of transportation we use, with a potentially enormous loss of jobs. For this reason, it's a little unclear just how society would adapt to something like a Hyperloop. The Hyperloop is one of those projects that lets you dream. And why not? It's an idea that has the potential to change our world. If it appears as we expect it to, it will be the most groundbreaking addition to transportation in living memory. But the most impressive thing about the whole project is that it started with a real community feel to it. This is a design open to all, and one that is likely to pop up quickly around the world. Perhaps we've spent too long competing with one another. Yes, there is a competition aspect to the Hyperloop, but the very nature of it has an international feel, the likes of which we've never really had before. Personally, we'd like to see the world have more projects like this, where we work together to build something and maybe even build a better world. This mega project will define the world someday, and just might provide one of those giant leaps in ingenuity that humans manage to put together every now and again. Science fiction fantasies are no longer distant dreams. Some of them might just be within touching distance. So I really hope you found that mega project interesting. A little bit of a futuristic, speculative one for you today. If you did enjoy it, you know what to do. Smash that thumbs up button. Also, please leave me your suggestions in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching.